After my divorce from my ex-husband, I was granted custody of our son. But my mother-in-law would constantly show up at my house every few days, claiming she missed her grandson. My son, Leo, was obsessed with going to an abandoned old electronics factory to pick up scrap. Every day, he'd bring back numerous strangely shaped stones. I told him to throw them away. But his grandmother insisted on praising her grandson's keen eye, saying even the stones he picked up could glow. Later, I found out I got cancer precisely because of those stones. My mother-in-law, however, accused me of being delusional, claiming those were her grandson's treasures. What she didn't know was that the stones my son brought home were radioactive and would cause cancer. After I died, I opened my eyes again. I was back on the day my ex-husband and I went to court to dispute custody of our son. The judge on the bench asked me, "Ms. Sarah, are you certain you wish to fight for custody of Leo?" I smiled, looking towards my mother-in-law. "No, I give it up. This time, I'll return your treasure to you, along with the cancer, all yours." Sometime after my death, I was still replaying the doctor's words in my mind. I hovered in the air, watching funeral home staff place my body into a bag, while my mother-in-law sat wailing on the ground. Crying to the heavens, she cursed the abandoned factory by the river and the owner who had long since vanished. Before that, while I was in the hospital, she never once visited me. But when my death caused a huge stir, she shamelessly bragged about her relationship with her son and me. Not content with losing face alone, she even called my ex-husband David. The two of them, mother and son, brazenly clung to the staff handling my body, demanding compensation. "Because of your irresponsibility, my daughter-in-law died. Otherwise, how could she have got cancer so young? And my poor darling grandson so young to lose his mother?" She opened her mouth, demanding 10 million. The employee, held fast by her, looked extremely uncomfortable, wanting to shake her off, but the mother-in-law clung to him like a leech. I watched them cause a scene at the hospital room door, feeling only a cold, bitter irony. My spirit hovered in the air, my eyes still burning with rage. How could they, the perpetrators of the evil that killed me, get away with it, while I was the one who ultimately suffered for their actions? In my unwillingness to accept this, I gradually lost consciousness. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the midst of my divorce proceedings with David. In the solemn courtroom, I heard the judge pronounce, "Ms. Sarah, are you certain you wish to fight for custody of Leo?" My lawyer beside me anxiously urged me. I flinched, then abruptly set down the thick stack of documents in my hand. In my previous life, I'd stayed up for a week drafting those very documents to win custody of Leo. But I never imagined that the child I'd fought so hard for would ultimately become the very charm that claimed my life. I looked up and spoke, under the bewildered gazes of everyone present. "Your Honor, I wish to withdraw my petition for custody of Leo." As I finished speaking, I let out a sigh of relief. The entire courtroom erupted in murmurs. My own father, disregarding the solemnity of the court, immediately scolded me in front of everyone. "You heartless wretch, not even upholding your duties as a wife. Divorce is one thing, but now you don't even want your own child. How will I ever show my face in public again?" I didn't know if he could ever hold his head high. At that moment, I looked up and caught David's cunning smile. "If I give up custody, will my assets not need to be transferred to the husband's family?" The judge nodded. "That is correct, naturally." David, who had been grinning smugly, suddenly heard this news, and his expression changed, unable to maintain his smile. "How can this be?" "Your Honor, wasn't it agreed that if she were to gain custody, she would then transfer the house and car and asterisk her asterisk name to me? In my previous life, precisely because I stubbornly insisted on fighting for Leo's custody, David rejected all 3 of my appeals. Ultimately, I had no choice but to accept the Liu family's outrageous demands, even giving him the house and car that I had worked so hard to earn. How could I fall into his trap again in this life? If the Liu family considers Leo a treasure, then I'll just leave that treasure with the Liu family. David was clearly getting impatient. His mocking gaze from before now turned pleading. "How about just one house and one car then? I'll consider it an act of charity, leaving you a place to live. Surely that much is worth your son, isn't it?" His tone still held an indescribable arrogance, as if the child was solely mine. Before I could even speak, my father, seated below, couldn't wait any longer and nearly lunged forward. "Sarah, quickly agree to his terms. Leo is my grandson, I want my grandson. David has already compromised. If you keep pouting, don't call me your father." How ridiculous. The house and car were my private assets, things he could acquire simply by uttering a few words, so of course, he felt no pain. I probed, if Dad values his grandson so much, why not trade your retirement home for him? As soon as I said this, my father immediately fell silent. Pain that doesn't cut into their own flesh, they will naturally never understand. I looked at everyone before me with irony. This is all I have to say. I won't give up a single penny of my assets, and I don't want Leo. It wasn't until I had stated my decision clearly and definitively, turning to leave, that David finally panicked, completely losing his arrogant, self-satisfied demeanor. He rushed after me. Even just one house then. Seeing that I was unmoved, not stopping for even a step, he cursed loudly behind me. You stingy woman. Do you even deserve to be a mother? Hearing his curses, I found it incredibly soothing. It was merely the impotent rage of a powerless man. His inability to seize my assets, reduced to mere cursing, was even more laughable than my own situation. None of them knew that I had been reborn. If I were to compromise now, just for a few curses, I would have wasted the outcome of my previous life. In this life, I would no longer be a fool to be exploited. Sure enough, when I arrived home, my mother-in-law was lounging comfortably on the sofa as if nothing had happened. My son, Leo, was crawling around on the floor, making a mess of the new house I had just finished tidying up. My mother-in-law was still vigorously praising him, saying he was healthy and would surely be a talented person later. I rolled my eyes for a long moment before stepping inside. My mother-in-law's expression turned cold. They were just the same in my previous life. Even though custody wasn't David's, my mother-in-law would still come to my house every day as if it were her own. She'd claim she was worried about the child, but in reality, it was to seize all my assets. My mother-in-law called me over without even looking up, stroking the sofa and sighing. Should have let the boy's father claim this house then. So clean and tidy, even I want to move in. You've taken away my precious grandson. You ought to compensate our Liu family properly, don't you think? You've only lost a little money, but David has lost a whole son. She spoke as if she wouldn't be satisfied unless I left empty-handed. I calmly picked up the sofa cushion Leo had knocked to the floor, smiled, and congratulated her. No need for that. I'm returning your precious grandson to you right now. Conveniently, I haven't lost my money and David's son has returned to him. As soon as I finished speaking, I saw my mother-in-law's face crumble. How can this be? What are you saying? That house, that car, they're all… I cut her off. Of course, they're all mine. She was still trying to use her old tricks from my previous life to bind me. Too bad I wouldn't fall into her trap again. Sure enough, hearing my words, her expression immediately soured and her gaze at Leo shifted from loving to resentful. Just then, a stone, no one knew from where, fell from Leo's hand. My mother-in-law's face suddenly changed. She pinched the boy's arm hard. Stop playing, you motherless child, you can't do anything right, all you know is eating and playing. With that, she left Leo alone with me, storming off without looking back. Leo looked at me, then at his grandmother who had gone far away and let out a wail, crying as he chased after her. The remaining stones in his hands scattered across the floor. I squatted down and looked for a moment, an unpleasant thought suddenly striking me. That very night, I took out my phone and made a call. I spent the evening at home thinking it over carefully. In my previous life, Leo had started obsessively picking up stones about a month after I gained custody. If I wasn't mistaken, he would soon start bringing stones home in this life too. Although Leo had been given to David, there was no guarantee my mother-in-law wouldn't continue her antics. That night, I lay tossing and turning, unable to sleep, thinking of the painful suffering I endured from cancer in my previous life. Back then, I had pleaded with him endlessly, but he never gave up his bad habit of collecting scrap and bringing it home. In this life, I wouldn't gamble on his obedience. If heaven had given me a chance to start over, I would surely seize this fate firmly in my own hands. Suddenly, a person came to mind, the first one who had been willing to visit me after learning of my inexplicable cancer in my previous life. Before dawn the next day, I immediately got up and went to the town's bus station to catch the first bus. My destination was a research institute far from here. Unfortunately, halfway there, I ran into my mother-in-law, carrying Leo's school bag. Her attitude had completely changed from yesterday. She held 2 baskets of hot steamed buns. Seeing me, she immediately smiled and greeted me. "Daughter-in-law, aren't you taking Leo to school? Why are you up so early? Haven't you had breakfast yet? Conveniently, I bought these buns." Her smile gave me goosebumps, making me so nauseous I nearly threw up right there in the street. After I married her son, she would sleep until late morning every single day. Even when I was sick and unwell, she never once helped me. Instead, she would mock me. Only you are so dramatic, complaining every day about cooking and laundry. Is it really that tiring? I'm old and full of ailments. It's time for you to serve and show filial piety to me. How dare you order me around? David was no different. After I gave birth, I took half a year off. During that time, I had no income and had to endure her moods every day at home. I still don't understand why, even when I brought assets into their family, I never received good treatment. Yet now, on the very first day after my divorce, my mother-in-law's myriad illnesses seem to have been cured, and she no longer needs to sleep until late morning to get up. The only difference was that her mocking smile had now shifted to my asterisk face. I knew too well the fox's intentions for the chicken. She had no good intentions. Seeing my silence, she rolled her eyes and stepped forward, intending to grasp my hand. I took 3 steps back, addressing her. "Auntie, look at you. You're not feeling well. Why are you up so early? You should be enjoying your retirement. Just let David take him." Hearing my words, her smile finally vanished, truly ridiculous. David was such a patriarchal man. How could he possibly help her? Furthermore, in my previous life, she was the one who instigated David to demand more money and assets before he would concede custody of Leo. Unfortunately for her, she never imagined I would be reborn and straightforwardly give up custody. Not only did David fail to extort anything from me, but he also ended up saddled with a burden. Naturally, he wouldn't be in a good mood with his mother at home. Just by looking at the bruise at the corner of her left eye, I knew life at home must not have been easy, which is why she was once again thinking of her mobile punching bag, me. My mother-in-law, with a beaming face, tried to push the things she bought into my hands. "Oh, my eldest daughter-in-law still loves her mother. David, well, you know how he is, don't you? He's busy with work. It's normal for him not to be able to take care of the child. If the car were still at home, who knows, maybe he would have helped me." I chuckled. He's just a lowly employee in a company, barely earning a few pennies all year. On the contrary, to avoid childcare, he goes drinking and plays mahjong every day after work. What exactly is he busy with? Before, he could boast about the car and order me around to do this and that. Now that we're divorced, they naturally couldn't find an easily pliable punching bag like me anymore. When I desperately needed to use it, David wouldn't even let me borrow the car. I called him and he said very lightly, "Taxis are everywhere now. If you're in a hurry, why are you bothering me here?" "I think you're just pretending. You said you'd take the child back and treat him well. Now even picking him up and dropping him off is too much for you?" In the end, I had no choice but to breach my contract at work to go pick up Leo from school. When things happened to me, they were always so eloquent and logical. But now the same things were happening to them. Less than a day had passed, and they were already shifting responsibility, complaining and wailing. I had long seen through the true faces of this mother and son. At this point, I found nothing strange about the situation. My mother-in-law continued to babble. Seeing that softness wouldn't work, she resorted to toughness. "The child has to go to school, you should be understanding. You're a woman, not out doing business. What do you need a car for? My son has to support his family every day, he's so tired. I'm giving you a chance to show him some pity and you're still ungrateful. Hand over the car keys. You're so stingy, I won't even argue with you. I'll just tell David to come and drive himself." Even now, she still had the audacity to think I would rush to remarry David. I let out a cold laugh, dodging her attempt to snatch the keys. Thud! She lost her balance and tumbled to the ground. I didn't even bother to help her up. I used her very own most eloquent reason from my previous life. "The Liu family's child, isn't he? He's at your house now, isn't he? If your family's child has trouble getting to school, what does that have to do with me?" In my previous life, my mother-in-law used this very reason to cause a scene at my house, claiming she was the child's grandmother. If she wanted to be a grandmother, then I would let her be one to her heart's content. I didn't look back. I turned to leave, but then I saw strangely shaped stones scattered from my son's fallen school bag. A nerve snapped in my head. I grabbed my mother-in-law's hand. "Where did you pick up these ridiculous things?" Seeing my sudden anger, my mother-in-law stiffened her neck, but her voice weakened. "Didn't you reject your own son? These are my grandson's treasures. What concern are they of yours?" Even now, she still regarded these worthless things as treasures. I ignored her, silently securing the stones, then swaggered away. Ever since I inexplicably contracted cancer in my previous life, a nagging question had remained unanswered in my heart. In this life, I was determined to find out. The year I got cancer also caused quite a stir in the village. Back then, cancer wasn't a common illness. Later, even on TV, they reported on my story. The reports emphasized the strangely shaped stones. But when reporters wanted to interview my mother-in-law to uncover the truth, she exploited this excellent opportunity to spread awareness and slander my reputation. She proclaimed on television, "My daughter-in-law was always lazy. It must be because she was too lazy to do housework," and argued with her in-laws that heaven gave her such an outcome. In my opinion, women should know their place, take care of their husbands, and be filial to their in-laws. She spoke with such conviction that even when reporters later tried to speak up for me, saying my illness was due to strange stones and urging people not to pick up unusual objects, no one paid attention anymore. It wasn't until the bus spewed out thick smoke that I finally arrived at my destination. In my previous life, after I fell ill, countless people visited me to understand the situation. Each of their bags bore a very noticeable logo, Tung Duong County Research Institute. It was just 7:00 a.m., dawn was breaking, and the lights inside the institute were still on. I arrived feeling anxious. I only had suspicions, but no concrete evidence. To my surprise, the on-duty staff quickly welcomed me. I held a cup of water, anxiously waiting. Someone emerged from an inner room, still wearing the Research Institute's specialized white lab coat. Seeing me, he immediately cut to the chase, asking about my situation. "You suspect these stones have some sort of problem?" I set the cup down and articulated the words I had rehearsed countless times in my head. "These stones naturally glow. I suspect they might cause cancer." My statement likely sounded like a fabrication, but the person opposite me showed no impatience, unlike my mother-in-law. He seriously explained to me, "Actually, there are many types of glowing stones in everyday life, such as silver ore, luminous stones, and so on. The stones you've wrapped in this bag, their material strongly resembles fluorescent glowing rock." I panicked and interrupted him. "I know you might not believe me now, but it's better to be safe than sorry. There isn't just one of these stones. If they truly can cause cancer, many people out there will be harmed." I wasn't exaggerating. It was only after I died in my previous life that I learned I wasn't the only one who got cancer from the stones my son picked up. The person next to him looked at the stones in my hand and said dismissively, "You certainly have a vivid imagination." I ignored the dismissive speaker, focusing intently on the man in front of me. Perhaps my gaze was too sincere. He frowned, disregarding the urging of others in the institute. "All right then, I'll take these stones for examination first. Come back here in a week and I'll give you an answer." As soon as he finished speaking, the person standing next to him looked at him, bewildered. "Ethan, are you crazy? Those stones she's holding are clearly just silver ore. Don't you know how limited our institute's resources are? Testing equipment is so expensive. How can we use it to test random stones picked up from the street?" The person next to him continued to rant, but I only heard the name of that researcher. Ethan. In my previous life, it was he who, after I got cancer, was the first to visit me on behalf of the Research Institute. Neither Ethan nor I knew at this moment that this small act of persistence would later save countless lives. During that week, while the stones were being tested, I was far from idle. As soon as I finished work, I rushed home to research related documents. Ethan even came to see me once, surprisingly supportive. "The work at the Institute is immense, our time is truly limited." I asked him, "Then why are you willing to help me?" He smiled. "Our time is indeed scarce, but you're right. If something truly dangerous like this exists, sooner or later someone will encounter it. Human life is paramount. If these stones are indeed dangerous, and we only take it seriously after someone dies because of them, then that would be our negligence." I looked at him. On his face was the most genuine smile. I knew he was just like me because I knew what we were doing was helping others. I could have left Tung Duong County, gone far away to start anew. But I didn't, because I knew that carcinogenic stone would be found by someone, sooner or later. If not Leo, then someone else. Even if I wasn't the victim in this life, I couldn't just stand by and watch. I began communicating regularly with Ethan and would also examine any new stones my son brought home. Everything progressed very smoothly, but unexpectedly, the first person to disagree was my mother-in-law. I had already divorced David, but she still had a very strong possessive desire over my money. It was as if the money I was spending now rightfully belonged to her son and grandson. One day, I was researching documents on my newly bought computer. My mother-in-law walked in with her grandson as if no one else was there and threw my pencil straight to the ground. "You're really impressive now. My son hasn't even gotten to use a computer and you're already living in luxury. Stop doing these useless things, you don't have any feminine grace. Better to save some money, so when you die, you can leave it for your son to use." I burst out laughing in anger, but I didn't refute her. "You're right. How about you die first then? David will certainly take your money for your grandson to use." I paused, staring directly into her eyes. "Oh, I forgot something else. You wouldn't be like your son, a penniless wretch, would you? In my previous life, I let my mother-in-law and David exploit me, forgetting that their family was originally poor. From a young age, I never wanted to mention David. He got his job thanks to me. They never had the right to speak to me like that." My mother-in-law, hit where it hurt, sat down on the ground, crying in rage. Suddenly, my forehead stung. I turned around to see my son, Leo, continuously throwing stones from his hand at me. It wasn't until this life, when he was no longer by my side, that I finally understood that the wickedness of some children is innate and without reason. In my previous life, even until the end, he stayed by my side, but his wicked personality was exactly like his grandmother's. At school, he would badmouth me every day, saying that all the money he was spending was extorted from his father. One time, my mother-in-law asked me to pick up Leo. At the school gate, people pointed and cursed at me. "Look, she even dares to show her face in front of the child, isn't she ashamed? Don't you dare learn from her. If I married a woman like that, I'd beat her to death." But David and I divorced clearly because he had an affair and was irresponsible first. I used to think my son was instigated by his grandmother, but later I discovered that in class, he arbitrarily bullied female classmates. Lightly, he'd spit and throw stones at them. Severely, he'd curse and beat them. Later, a female classmate even reported to the school teacher that he peeked at them in the restroom, and his reason for doing all these things was simply because he thought he was too young to be held accountable. In my previous life, even by my side, he was uncontrollable. In this life, living with his grandmother, he became even more outrageous. Sure enough, not long after, he caused trouble at school. The homeroom teacher couldn't reach his grandmother or David, so she called me. A little girl was sobbing beside him. Leo, however, just laughed defiantly. The homeroom teacher looked very awkward. "Hello, are you Leo's mother?" Leo secretly entered the girls' restroom at school and was discovered by a classmate, and he made inappropriate gestures towards her. The classmate's father won't accept mediation. He wants the parents to come in. "Do you have time to come here? Also, he's been having continuous nosebleeds for several weeks. Isn't anyone concerned about him at home?" The homeroom teacher had spoken very tactfully, but I still got goosebumps. I immediately decided to go to the school, taking the opportunity to ask the teacher, "Leo's father and I are divorced. Custody now belongs to his father. I can come right now, but please call Leo's father as well." The homeroom teacher, who clearly often handled such incidents, paused for a moment, then immediately agreed. When I arrived, Leo still wore a nonchalant expression, tossing a glowing stone he'd picked up from who knows where in his hand, looking utterly unconcerned. The homeroom teacher, seeing me, immediately vehemently condemned Leo's behavior. Before I could even acknowledge blame or apologize, my mother-in-law lunged from behind me, quick as lightning, and slapped the little girl across the face. "You little vixen, just look at her. You can tell she's not a good girl." "My darling grandson has always been well-behaved and obedient. It's clear you've been seducing my excellent grandson." David, who had arrived at some unknown point, was aggressively scolding the homeroom teacher. "I entrusted my child to you. Is this how you manage him? So young and already not learning anything good, only knowing how to tempt boys in class. I can tell she'll grow up to be a slut." The girl's tears, which had just stopped, now flowed again. She stood behind her father, softly defending herself. "I didn't." The girl's father had just stepped away to answer a phone call, gone for less than 2 minutes. He returned to find his daughter being slapped and immediately flew into a rage. David was about to argue back, but as soon as he looked up and recognized the girl's father, his bravado vanished. I also knew the girl's father. He was David's direct superior. David saw the situation was dire. Before he could react, the girl's father kicked David hard, sending him to the ground. "Who the hell are you to dare hit my daughter? You yourself are a piece of trash, relying on women, and you raise a child who's also trash. You can tell how they'll turn out from when they're young. Don't you dare be arrogant. Your son is about to face prison time." He cursed fiercely. What father could tolerate his daughter being bullied at school and at such a young age? David was beaten without resistance. Several of his front teeth fell out and blood splattered everywhere, yet he didn't resist a single word. His mother stood there, stunned. I saw the homeroom teacher next to them spit towards David's mother. This whole family bullies the weak and fears the strong? But Leo, as if nothing had happened, calmly wiped away his nosebleed, and in this very situation, he even burst into laughter. It was said that David was fired the next day, and Leo was expelled from school due to the serious nature of his transgressions. Ultimately, no elementary school wanted to risk responsibility for such a troublesome child. This parasitic family, having completely lost their source of income, then targeted me. At this time, I was at the research institute. Ethan called me that very night. The test results were in. I had considered countless possibilities, but when I actually saw the test results, it was still like being struck on the head. The glowing stones Leo had picked up could indeed cause cancer. They even had a professional name, radioactive stones. As soon as the results were available, Ethan called me, asking where those stones had been found and explaining their harmful effects. Mild effects included nosebleeds and poisoning. If the stones contained radioactive substances, severe effects included amputation and cancer. It was clear that the stones Leo had picked up were now heavily contaminated with radiation. That very night, I went to David's house and woke up a sleeping Leo. His mother-in-law, throwing on a coat, saw Ethan and me and immediately grabbed a broom to chase us away. "Oh, how wonderful. Now you even bring a paramour right to my house. How shameless. It's so late. Where are you two planning to take my darling grandson? Sarah, do you have any conscience left?" My mother-in-law held me back, preventing me from leaving. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I turned back and slapped her across the face. "Get out. Don't block my way." I pushed my mother-in-law hard, not expecting her to fall conveniently at my feet. "Oh heavens, from the day David married you, I knew you were no good. Now you dare to push an old woman like me? I don't care what you say. If you don't pay my medical expenses today, you won't get away with this." I tried to pry her off, but failed several times. Looking at her, I suddenly noticed her nose was also bleeding. I shouted loudly, "Stop yelling. If you don't want to die, get out of my way right now." I kicked her hard to the ground, and seeing her pained expression, I didn't look back, grabbing my son and leaving. Once outside, I released him and said coldly, "Tell me, where did you pick up those worthless stones?" At first, he still casually smirked at me, so I didn't hesitate and slapped him twice. In the past, I had been too lenient with them. If words didn't work, action was quicker. Sure enough, after being disciplined, Leo's attitude immediately did a 180-degree turn. He quietly wiped his nose and led Ethan and me to that place. I didn't know how long we walked, nor how many turns we took. I only knew that when Ethan and I finally saw the scattered stones on the ground, we felt that our efforts had not been in vain. A professional inspection team arrived very quickly and provided Ethan and me with specialized protective gear. Including the stones Leo had brought home, a total of 13 stones were ultimately sent for testing. These were the 13 stones that had harmed countless people in my previous life. The new results would again take a week. But on the way back, I was incredibly joyful. I was happy that my worries were not groundless. I was happy that in this life, I finally didn't have to walk the same path as my previous one. And the families implicated by Leo in my previous life, a total of 20 families, would finally not have to suffer. After being reborn, I had always lived in self-doubt, constantly questioning the reason for my reincarnation. But now, with Ethan's help, I had found that reason. I sat on that smoky bus again, but the scenery along the way had become joyful and serene. When I returned to the village, banners had been put up at some unknown point. My mother-in-law, seeing me, no longer had the fierce demeanor from last night. Instead, she greeted me with a bright smile. "I heard from the village chief that you found a treasure. It's all thanks to my eldest grandson, you know. Otherwise, how would you have got such an opportunity? Tell you what, David and I have discussed it. Once the reward money comes, we'll let you and David remarry. From now on, you won't have to act tough in front of me anymore because your David will be here." David also arrived, standing smugly in front of his mother, his expression as if bestowing a favor upon me, yet with a hint of awkwardness. "A woman like you, utterly useless, and yet I'm still willing to remarry you. You should be secretly thrilled. I've forgiven your pettiness." After this remarriage, don't demand a divorce over trivial matters again." I ignored them, walked straight into the kitchen, and brought out a basin full of dirty wastewater, splashing it directly onto my mother-in-law and David. I watched impassively as they shrieked from the burning sensation, then I sneered, calmly saying, "Don't say I didn't warn you. You'd best go to the hospital for a checkup soon. See if your bodies, after being around a radioactive source for so long, are any worse than mine was in my previous life. Oh, and one more thing. The suffering I endured, only when you endure it yourselves, can it be called repayment to me." Sure enough, just as I predicted, David's entire family got cancer. And because in this life, his mother hadn't stopped Leo from picking up random things, their cancer was far more severe than mine had been in my previous life. Leo's arm muscles had even necrotized due to radiation exposure, and he was facing the risk of amputation. As soon as the test results came in, Ethan and the Research Institute staff spent over a week tirelessly investigating, finally recovering all the remaining radioactive stones from other households. Fortunately, in this life, Leo only affected his own Liu family. As for Ethan and me, for our efforts in discovering the dangerous items, we were awarded the title of enthusiastic citizens. On the day of the award ceremony, I rarely wore makeup. Ethan smiled and complimented my appearance. I smiled back and thanked him. I thanked him for believing in me unconditionally from our very first meeting. I thanked him for not dismissing those things as just a pile of worthless stones, but I wore makeup to celebrate my rebirth. Afterward, Ethan invited me to be a consultant for the Tung Duong County Research Institute. I had dedicated a lot of passion to studying radioactive stones. Ethan said, "It would be a waste not to use your expertise." I smiled, looking at him. In the young man's eyes was an uncontainable magnanimity. I gladly agreed because I knew that perhaps one day the knowledge I gained could help others. That's enough. I told myself, that's enough. This was the meaning of my rebirth. Days passed like this. I heard news of the Liu family again on a television program. It was said that both of Leo's arms had been amputated, and of his 4 limbs, only half of his left leg remained. David, due to extremely poor health, had passed away half a month prior. Among the 3 members of the Liu family, the mother-in-law's condition was surprisingly the best. Unfortunately, in the program, her cancer was also very advanced. All her hair had fallen out, and her mouth was contorted. This time, the words coming from her mouth were finally no longer praises for her darling grandson. She spitefully cursed Leo. "I'm truly ill-fated, all because of my useless son and that meddlesome grandson. I only spoiled him a little." I chuckled bitterly and changed the channel. Perhaps she would never know that it was precisely her indulgence of her grandson that indirectly caused a tragedy for over 20 families a year later. But that's fine. Even if she couldn't know the truth, her own body would repent before her. So I wished her a long life of 100 years.